Everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to an art journal tutorial. Here is a sneak peek. And the message for this one is be scared and do it anyways. Try those new techniques. Today I'm testing out a page from an old recipe book and I'm seeing what kind of medium it stands up to. So what you see me gluing down with matte medium is pages from an old address book. I had this stuck in my stash and I thought, you know what? Instead of adding color, I'm going to put this down. And there's just the address book, and I have, about 20 of these sheets that had pictures on them. And I liked them enough, and I've kept them. And yeah, probably 3-4 years. I've got some old music sheets that I bought at the thrift store. As I said, the paper and below I also bought at the thrift store, and I will put a link to the video where I show how I'm repurposing that. But testing this paper out was one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to see, did I need to gesso it? Do I need to give it more support? How well does it stand up to what we throw at it in mixed media and in art journaling? So as you can see, there are hole punches on the side. This goes into a binder. And when I'm collaging, I'm not worried because I know I have I can punch out a hole punch and I can punch that out. So I know I'm going kind of a vintage color, and I like the reds and the kind of green that I've got going on here and the gold of the vintage music paper. So everything that you see right now is stuff that is old, that I've repurposed. I got at the thrift store, or I just never threw out myself. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. My Liquitex Basics, or my Liquitex gel or matte liquid is almost out, so I'm kind of squeezing it. Now I flipped through and I pulled out a gel print. Now I don't really particularly like the gel print, I like the colors. But a magical thing happens when you start ripping your gel prints that you may not want to use as a whole. They take on a whole life. Here I wanted to really bump up that red color. And you'll note, up till now I haven't used an iota of paint. So you can use scrapbook paper. You can use pages from a magazine that has colors that you like. And this is a great project to take when you are traveling, because you're ripping and gluing, and you can make multitudes of these backgrounds and then turn them into something when you have more of your supplies around. So I've basically filled the entire sheet with these collage papers. And these papers have different thicknesses, and that is going to give me some wonderful texture. So I grabbed this brocade stencil. This is a cookie and cake stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And I thought this brocade would look good. And I did it in black. And right now I'm thinking, oh, you know what? A little too much black. But obviously I didn't think that, because here I go adding more. I needed something smaller. And I'm just adding. Now remember, I'm not done. As much as I loved what was before I put that, you just keep going. Here is a quadrifoil stencil, and I'm going to add some gesso. This is gesso that has thickened over time. And I'm just putting the gesso through. Now, why gesso and not paint? It will take paint differently. This will give a little bit of texture. You could use texture paste at this point. You can use drywall compound if you're doing it, if you want an inexpensive variation. This gesso is relatively cheap. It was the store brand gesso, and it's thickened over time. I'm going to go back and buy some more and deliberately hope that it thickens, because I love using it in this way. And I'm putting it in 3 different places. Now this has pushed back some of that black that I was thinking was just too much and has added some interesting detail. It's not a perfect stencil. I wasn't going for that. I want that vintage feel. In my world, vintage also has script. So this is Secret Garden script stamp that came with a set, and I'll put a link to that since I was able to find that on Amazon. It also has other stamps that will fit the vintage vibe. So I'm grabbing my or, glaze medium. I was going to do brown, but I thought, you know what? I'm going to bring out that green. I'm going to put 2 glazes on here. I'm going to use my Hooker's green and get some of that green going in the background. And then I'm going to come back with my raw umber and do another layer. And with glazes, you can do that. You put it on, let it sit for a while, rub some of it off, and it catches in the gesso, in the nooks and crannies. So now my gesso is simply, it's not that stark white. I didn't want it to be stark white. That doesn't fit the vintage vibe I'm going for. Now I could have left it as this, but I'm grabbing the raw umber and adding it to the glazing medium and putting more the brown on top. And then with a baby wipe or a paper towel, I can take off more or less. You got a little bit of that green showing through and you got a little bit of that brown, and it just kind of neutralized and made the entire background work together. And this is a step that I think sometimes we miss. I didn't want to, but I can see the music paper. I can see everything. Now I'm unsure what to do here, so I am edging it. I know that I will edge it later, but it just kind of frames it, and it's one of the tricks that I do in order to kind of figure out where I'm at. And I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to go around some of these quadrifoils and bring them out. So I took the Magnolia Blossom stencil and I stenciled with unbleached titanium because I'm thinking the white would have been too stark. And I did 1 layer and it's not opaque enough, so I'm coming back and doing another layer. Now, if you don't have unbleached titanium, add a little brown to it, add a little yellow to it to get the color that you want if you want an off-white. And then because it was so light, I am coming back in with some of the gesso that I had there. You could grab white and just adding some highlights. And that just made that pop. I needed that little bit of brightness. So when I had some of the raw umber with the glazing medium, I painted it over the sentiment. Be scared and do it anyways. I didn't want the background to be white. And when you use the glazing medium, it doesn't cover up the print. So that's a good trick to colorize your sentiment. So it's not the stark white, but it doesn't cover up the text. And I'm deciding, do I want to put a magnolia blossom down here? And then I decide, you know what? I'm good with it where it's at. So I wanted to bring out a little bit more of the white. So I'm using the gesso and a makeup sponge. And I want to add some little texture to this and a little bit more brightness. Because I do want it to be a bit of a focal point. And I'm kind of piecemealing the leaf there. With the makeup sponge, you're getting a little bit of texture because from the gesso. Now I'm taking some of that gesso and because I want to highlight some of the quadrifoils, And I'm just watering it down and lightly brushing with the pad of my finger just to brighten it up. And it just, I just adds that lightness to the background. How do I know to do that? You go and you try it and get a baby white ready. If it works, if you like the effect, then you run with it. Now, I wanted a little something extra, but not. So I grab this screen view stencil, which I love for adding a little bit of details, and I'm stenciling with gold. So it's kind of pushing things back, but it's not in your face. And you get that shimmer and shine. Now, in a perfect world, I would have done this before I did the quadrifoil stencil, before I put the magnolia on. But I didn't. And that's okay because I can go in and do it. If it went over top of the magnolia, I can touch it up. A lot of times I don't know until I do it. And that's what I love about working in my art journal. Because now I can duplicate this in the order I think it needs to be. And I've learned something. I'm really liking the quadrifoils being a little brighter. So I'm coming in with a paintbrush and then mucking around with my finger there a little bit. I'm not precise. I want that vintage feel, but I'm loving how that it just brightens the page. Now my sentiment is printed out on copy paper that I buy at Costco. It's a little heavier, it's very smooth. And it stands up to, the gel, the liquid medium that I'm using here, or putting paint on. It doesn't pill as some regular copy papers do. So I'm gluing that down with the matte liquid medium. My brand is Liquitex. So in a minute, you are going to see a close-up before I shaded and a close-up of after I shade. So this is before, and it looks fine the way it is. But this is after I've used the charcoal pencil and I've gone around the magnolia and the quadrifoils. It's added a depth to it and back again to before. So now I'm going to show you how I achieved that. Now I'm using two different charcoal pencils. This is a General's charcoal pencil, extra soft. It's very dark and you can get a finer point. The other one that I use is my woodless charcoal pencil. Do you need both? No. But for around the edges, I like the woodless charcoal pencil. It allows me to put more on faster. Now that's not permanent, so if this was on a canvas, you would need to spray it with a spray fixative to settle it before you put wet medium on it. So there's the magnolia blossom. So I'm coming in with the charcoal pencil and I'm going to shade around it. So I'm going around it and just smudging it. I don't want it so pristine. So the quote here, be scared and do it anyway. There's lots of times it's like, oh, I love the background. I'm too scared to go ahead. You know what? Be scared and do it anyways. You're not going to learn if you play it safe all the time. And my challenge, my word of the year this year is to challenge. So I am challenging myself. I am trying different things. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But more times than not, I'm loving where I end up. And that is the joy of doing it in the art journal. It's a piece of paper. Completely loving this. I hope you love it as much as I do. You can see the papers, you can see everything shining through. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you take the challenge, try something new, come and share it in my Facebook group, Mixed Media Creations. Don't let fear stop you. Jump right in. Links to products that I've used can be found in the description box below. Thank you so much for shopping in my Amazon store. As always, I'll see you in the next video. Please check out the video where I repurpose the book or binder that this page comes from. Bye for now.